CNN Today with Bobby Batista and Lou Waters, weekdays 1 Eastern on CNN.
Robert Kardashian was O.J. Simpson's friend, business partner, and at least once bag carrier. Was he also Simpson's lawyer? Kardashian took Simpson's garment bag when Simpson came home the day after the murders to find police at his house. He also later picked up Simpson's golf bag at the airport. During the criminal trial, Kardashian sat at the defense table and asserted the attorney-client privilege to avoid testifying. At his deposition in the civil case, Kardashian admitted he had searched Simpson's golf bag for the murder weapon, but said he did not find one. Kardashian refused, however, to answer most deposition questions, again asserting the attorney-client privilege.
Answering everything that, that I'm legally entitled to.
Now, in interviews included in a new book and on network television, Kardashian has opened up, discussing opening the golf bag and bearing his doubts about Simpson's innocence. Has Kardashian violated his duty as an attorney, though, or as a friend?
You don't have to be a lawyer to have ethics. I mean, and if you are a lawyer, you must have ethics. So my answer to you is that what he did will live with him for the rest of his life.
This is Burden of Proof with Greta Van Susteren and Roger Cossack.
Robert Kardashian said on national television that he has doubts about O.J. Simpson's innocence.
Does this violate attorney-client privilege? And what's the remedy? That's today on Burden of Proof, right after the hour's top stories from Bobby Batista at CNN Center in Atlanta. Bobby?
Greta, the leading candidates for getting ready for tonight's final presidential debate in San Diego. Bob Dole is expected to attack President Clinton on ethics. Meanwhile, Clinton is wrapping up a visit to New Mexico. His aides say the president plans to focus on the issues. CNN plans full coverage of the debate, beginning with Inside Politics at 8:30 Eastern. We'll have more news later. For a check of financial headlines now, here's Marina Colby in New York.
Thank you, Bobby. A fall for stocks and bonds on Wall Street. Today's stream of earnings reports and a fairly tame inflation number failing to inspire investors. The Dow Jones Industrials are down about 33 points, a level of 59.71, once again below the 6,000 level. Shares in Dow component Merck are up a quarter after a rise in third quarter earnings and sales. Broader and secondary markets mostly lower. The NASDAQ down almost 12 points. Compaq down $1.05 despite a 43% rise in profits. In the bond market, the 30-year Treasury down 22/32, a yield at 6.89%, and that despite a mild 0.3% rise in consumer prices last month. That is the latest financial news. I'm Marina Colby at the New York Stock Exchange.
Welcome to Burden of Proof. Robert Kardashian was one of O.J. Simpson's lawyers. Kardashian sat at the defense table during Simpson's criminal trial and was in on numerous meetings between Simpson and his defense team.
Now Kardashian has publicly declared his doubts about Simpson's innocence. He is also the apparent source of some confidential communications about Simpson's defense that are included in a new book. So has Kardashian violated the attorney-client privilege? Just before we went on the air about 15 minutes ago, I had a phone call from Robert Kardashian who indicated to me the following. He said that he was only one of the sources for that new book and that he specifically denied that he was the source for the now famous flunking of the lie detector story that is in that book. Jeffrey Toobin, you're a lawyer, a former prosecutor. Has he violated the attorney-client privilege?
Roger, as you know, the title of the biggest sleaze in the O.J. Simpson case is a hotly contested one. But I think Robert Kardashian is really vaulting to the top, if not the very top of this list, with his disclosures to Barbara Walters and in this book. I mean, I just think it's appalling judgment, it's appalling behavior, and it's of a piece with Robert Kardashian's life up to this point.
But Jeffrey, you missed the big question Roger asked you. Did he violate the attorney-client privilege? Not whether he's a sleaze or not a sleaze. Did he violate the privilege?
Yes. I think there's no doubt in my mind that he violated the attorney-client privilege. I mean, the irony here is he's not a real lawyer to start with. I mean, his chief function in this case was to be sort of a bag carrier, to carry Simpson's suit every day.
Well, but are you claiming that he wasn't a lawyer?
Well, no,
I mean,
he was.
The court upheld an attorney-client privilege for him.
I mean, that's what's so outrageous about his behavior. I mean, this is a guy who was subpoenaed by the prosecution in the criminal case, who refused to answer questions both to the prosecution in the criminal case and the plaintiffs in the civil case on the grounds of the attorney-client privilege. And now, with a chance to stuff a few dollars in his pocket, you know, he has no problem answering questions from Barbara Walters. It's a disgrace.
Paul Rothstein, you're a law professor. What is the attorney-client privilege? What does it cover?
Well, whether or not he has actually violated the privilege, he has violated the duty that runs between attorney and client, a duty of fidelity and faithfulness. The privilege covers information passed in confidence between attorney and client. If Kardashian didn't give the information about flunking the lie detector test, maybe he didn't disclose things that O.J. told him, but he did some other things that go against the attorney-client privilege that violate the duty of fidelity. He is saying that everybody doubted whether O.J. was innocent or not, that sort of thing.
Well, he actually torpedoed his client, I think, when he got on national TV and says, I have doubts now about my client. I think he torpedoed his client and torpedoed the civil case.
Well, he isn't supposed to do that, but let me just be devil's advocate and come to his defense for a minute. All he said was that Shapiro and Kardashian and A.C. Cowlings had doubts about O.J.'s innocence. He didn't say they thought he was guilty. Maybe they were just intelligent.
What else is there?
Maybe
if you're not innocent, you're guilty.
Well, a lawyer examines all sides of things, and so do human beings. You wouldn't be a human being if you didn't have some doubts about even whether the sun's going to rise
Barry
tomorrow.
Tarlow in Los Angeles, what do you think? Did he violate the attorney-client privilege, and is he now going to be able to be called as a witness in the civil case?
I think that what we saw from Bob Kardashian is really disappointing. That is, here is a man who did what all of us would think would be admirable. Gave up much of his life for a year for his friend, to defend him, to stand by him for little or no money, and quite frankly, I thought was one of the people who appeared to be the most honorable among the various characters. Now this book is being written. I don't know whether he's getting paid or not, but somehow he said things he ought not to have said. I don't think what he said is anywhere near as bad as the hype or the outtakes from the interviews. Anyone who saw the whole Barbara Walters interview, and putting aside the business about flunking the lie detector test, saw him defending O.J. Simpson and believing that O.J. Simpson was innocent.
But wait a second, Barry,
wait. But he said he had doubts. He's not a bump on a log. Anyone hearing these evidence might have some doubts or questions about certain parts of the evidence. But he clearly never said that he thought O.J. Simpson was guilty.
Oh, Barry, I think you're splitting hairs. I mean, it's one thing for a friend to speak out and say that he thinks his friend has done something criminal or immoral, but this is a lawyer who has represented a client. You're supposed to be able to go to your lawyer like your priest or your minister and have communications in confidence. The lawyer isn't supposed to get on national television and suddenly say, aha, now that I've spent all this time with you, I have doubts about your innocence, knowing that there's a civil jury being picked.
I think the lawyer-client privilege is one of the most important protections that citizens in this country have. Lawyers ought not to communicate private conversations. They ought to, on pain of imprisonment, not give up client secrets. But that said, he didn't do any of that. All he said was the blood evidence was troubling. Well, any thinking person would understand that the blood evidence was troubling. I'm not defending his interview, but what I'm saying, in order to sell TV or newspapers, that it's been hyped way beyond any disclosures that he actually made.
Barry, didn't he really do what, I mean, aren't we criticizing him for the exact same thing that we criticized Robert Shapiro for? That is, after the case was over, Shapiro came out, said some things, did some things, and we said, gee, as a lawyer, you should never do those things. Well, perhaps he wasn't the lawyer who played the role that Shapiro did in this case, but doesn't he fall into the same sense of criticism?
Well, I don't think what he did can necessarily be defended. All I'm saying is it is not the most terrible, egregious breach as it has been pictured in the media.
Doesn't the California Ethics Code have the provision that says that he owes a duty of faithfulness for his entire life to his client? He may not turn on his client and cause him damage, that's unfaithfulness to your client, and the system can't operate if clients are worried that their lawyers are going to do this?
Paul, it absolutely does, and you don't need a canon of ethics to understand what you do. I knew both Roger and Greta before they were rich and famous, and both of them had a moral compass, and that moral compass tells you what you ought not to be doing. And so I find it offensive, certainly, that he disclosed that in private O.J. Simpson flunked a lie detector test, particularly on the verge of the civil trial.
Which he denies, by the way. He denies.
Do you think that he doesn't care about losing his license? He's going to make a lot of money now. What does he care if they disbar?
All right, Barry, don't answer that question because we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll let you know whether or not we'll let you tell us whether you think he cares or not. But right now, we have to take a break. If Kardashian did breach the attorney-client privilege, what can O.J. Simpson do about it? Stay with us.
To access CNN Interactive on the World Wide Web, call 1-800-WORLD-NET, extension CNN, for free Internet software.
Every day, lots of people choose FedEx to take their two-day packages. Cost about $12.
Every day, lots of people choose UPS to take their two-day packages. Cost about $6.
Every day, lots more people choose the U.S. Postal Service to take their priority mail 2- to 3-day packages. Cost $3.
So, 12, 6, 3, what's your priority? Priority mail from the U.S. Postal Service.
Glamorous Hollywood? Not to me. For me, it's long hours and strange locations. Can't get slowed down by irregularity. My doctor says exercise, eat right. But sometimes a meal is whatever you can grab between takes. My doctor suggested Metamucil, the only leading brand with 100% natural fiber, like the fiber in healthy foods. Keeps me regular, gently, so I can give my usual award-winning performance.
Metamucil, the doctor's natural choice for regularity.
When planning your next vacation, call the expert, your AAA travel agent, because there's nothing better than a Carnival Fun Ship vacation. Get away aboard Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world. Right now, a 3-day cruise starts at just $299. AAA also offers members exclusive savings on select Carnival cruise vacations. For details, call 1-800-374-1106.
Travel with someone you trust.
AAA Travel Services.
What world-famous airline have business travelers across America voted as the #1 airline to Canada? Time's up. Air Canada. Welcome to our world.
According to Mutual Funds magazine, tough guys finish first. The fund industry's toughest portfolio managers, Lawrence Oriana and Hans Utsch, have made the Kaplan Fund the #1 fund since the market low of December 4th, 1987. The fund invests in small companies with substantial growth prospects. The Kaplan Fund was awarded Morningstar's highest 5-star rating. Call now for your prospectus, 800-824-0600, the Kaufman Fund, 800-824-0600.
Access the most up-to-date weather forecast on the web at CNN.com. 4-day forecast for over 400 cities worldwide. Forecast in satellite maps for 35 world regions, plus Doppler radar updated hourly. CNN Interactive Storm Center tracks the latest weather-making news, and Storm File traces the history of headline-making storms. The most complete international weather, now available at CNN.com.
Welcome back. We're talking about Robert Kardashian and the attorney-client privilege. If Kardashian did reveal client confidences, what can Simpson do about it? Barry, I'm going to ask you that question, but before I ask you that question, I promised that you would get a chance to respond to Paul's question, which was, what if Kardashian doesn't care about losing his license? What remedies are there?
Well, I think, first of all, I think one of the things Paul asked me is why he was doing this. And I think Bob Kardashian, for conducting a noble defense of his friend, has in some sense become a pariah. And it seemed to me he is trying to rehabilitate himself, not with lawyers, but with the public, trying to show that he's a decent person.
Boy, I hit the ceiling with that, Barry. When you start getting lawyers who are more worried about their reputations than their clients, I think that we're in trouble in terms of the legal system, because lawyers are not supposed to be afraid and worried about their reputation.
Oh, Greta, you had a courtroom full of them. Concerned more about their reputations than their clients in this case.
Greta,
and I think that's one of the reasons why there was so much damage to the legal profession by this case.
And I'm not saying that that's right or that's what he should be doing. It's my thought as to what he's doing, and I agree with Jeffrey. It's hard to believe that something could be done to diminish the way we lawyers are viewed in the public.
Jeff, what's the remedy?
But I believe that this trial has accomplished something that I thought was impossible, that is lowering the image of American lawyers.
Jeff, what's the remedy?
And I think this incident has accomplished something that I thought was impossible, which is making me feel a little sorry for O.J. Simpson. I don't think he has much of a remedy here.
What about a breach of contract if he has a retainer agreement?
He could theoretically sue, but I mean, it would involve, rehashing all this business. Kardashian could claim that he did all this work for free. Whatever money he got out of this book could be set off against it. I mean, I think it's the last thing in the world.
Do you think that, as often happens in these high-profile cases, that it was part of the payment to Kardashian, maybe the only payment, that O.J. agreed he could write a book and give interviews and say whatever he wants?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's important, again, with all the figures in this case, to look at their background. I mean, right before this case broke, Robert Kardashian's wife left him for Bruce Jenner. Then she started doing Thigh Master commercials with Bruce Jenner on television, and it drove Kardashian crazy that she was getting all this attention and he wasn't getting attention. This was an opportunity for him to become prominent, to become famous, to read the so-called suicide note. Simpson allowed him that glimpse of the limelight, and that's really what this was about.
If he did, and the scope of the consent encompasses all these damaging things, if he said, say whatever you want, Mr. Kardashian, that's your payment, then there's no ethical violation and there's no contract violation, there's no lawsuit. O.J. isn't likely to want to, as you say, rehash all this bad stuff yet again in a lawsuit.
I mean, knowing what I do about the Simpson defense team and O.J.'s relationship with his lawyers, I don't think any of this was as explicit as all that. I think there were sort of winks and nods, and Simpson is now in a position of not having a specific legal remedy.
Boy, I'd hit the ceiling if I were Phil Baker right now representing O.J. Simpson, and I find out there was some sort of agreement where O.J. Simpson agreed that Bob Kardashian could betray some confidences or say that he had doubts about his innocence in order to sell books in the midst of a civil trial.
Well, maybe he just said you could say anything you want. O.J.'s the master of ambiguity.
Hey, Paul, let me ask you this. Should lawyers write books about their clients and about their trials after the trials are over?
Well,
or is that a violation just per se?
I would say that's very troublesome, but I have one eye on the free speech guarantee, and it is good for the public to get the information like Jeff Toobin gave us about the...
But Jeff Toobin wasn't the attorney.
In the Oliver North case, he was.
Jeff Toobin thought he was the attorney, but he wasn't the attorney.
In the Oliver North case, he was, and his book was very valuable. The public learned some stuff they wouldn't otherwise learn. I'm schizophrenic about that. I'm of two minds about that.
All right, well, we're going to leave you right there with being schizophrenic. And then there were 102. We'll tell you about jury selection yesterday in the Simpson case after this.
Today on CNN Talk Back Live, on the one-year anniversary of the Million Man March, has anything changed? I'm Susan Rook. What difference did it make? Tell us what you think. Today, 3 Eastern on CNN.
I love my denture cream. Hold on, not so fast. Monty Hall.
Will this denture wearer give up his denture cream?
I'll trade you this toothpaste for your denture cream.
Plain old toothpaste? Not for my dentures.
I'll add this mouthwash. Denture cream is loaded with minty mouthwash ingredient to help control denture odor. I'll even throw in a box of soaks. No way. Denture cream special stain fighters clean much better than soaks. Oh, you can't beat that deal. All you need is denture cream.
For 36 years, Dr. Pearl has believed in providing the best in value. And now at Pearl Vision, we're celebrating our anniversary with a fantastic frame sale. All our frames are 50% off, every one reduced by half. But hurry, Pearl's Founders Day sale ends soon.
In a side-by-side comparison, we found that more people prefer the quicker, easier Energizer tester over any other on-battery tester. It's the best way to make sure your battery keeps going and going.
I have a vice. Cheese soup. I know, full of fat. But this new chicken Alfredo soup from Healthy Choice, tender chicken, rich cheesy sauce, only 3 grams of fat. Healthy Choice. Just say no? No way.
Every 2 minutes, somebody gets a home loan from Countrywide. Well, that's nearly 800 loans just today. $23,000 a month, nearly $280,000 in a year. But you only need one. That's easy, really. Countrywide Home Loans.
What world-famous airline have business travelers across America voted as the #1 airline to Canada? Time's up. Air Canada. Welcome to our world.
An Air Force captain does not return from battle in Vietnam. His son grows up to become one of the NFL's great linebackers. Now Derek Thomas dedicates every game to his father before fighting his battle on the gridiron. Seahawks Chiefs, tomorrow night at 7. The NFL's on TNT. Don't miss a game.
We welcome your comments. Write Burden of Proof at Post Office Box 740166, Atlanta, Georgia 30374-0166. Or you can fax us at 404-681-3578.
The final round of questioning to pick the Simpson jury began yesterday. A pool of 102 prospective jurors must be narrowed down to a panel of 12 plus 8 alternates. Barry, as far as we know, yesterday there was no mention in the courtroom to the prospective jurors about the Kardashian interview on Friday night. Wouldn't that be something you'd be concerned about if you were O.J. Simpson's lawyers picking this jury?
Yeah, I would be terribly concerned about it, and it seems to me that kind of publicity has to be inquired about.
Why do you think that no one mentioned it yesterday? I would have done it first thing Tuesday morning when they weren't open on Monday.
Maybe they did. Maybe they're going to deal with it later. But it seems to me something has to be done about it.
Greta, the interesting thing is that a lot of this stuff that Kardashian says will be inadmissible because O.J. Simpson probably still has his attorney-client privilege. Kardashian can't waive that for him by going public, and also because it's hearsay and it's opinion, but this jury's hearing about it anyway.
And that's the main problem. They're not going to hear it during the course of the trial,
That's right.
but unless they haven't paid any attention to the media, which they're not supposed to, they may have heard it. And Jeff, you covered the criminal trial. You think the prospective jurors have heard anything about this Kardashian interview?
I bet they have, but there's nothing so sensational in this material that would change their impressions. I mean, there has been so much publicity about this case that one more thing, it would almost, I think, call more attention to it.
Well, Jeff, what about the fact that the lawyers, the chief lawyer, Shapiro, at the time, doubted his innocence? That might be meaningful to a jury, and that AC doubted his innocence.
With all respect, I mean, my book, which came out a month ago, you know, had the lie detector in it. It had Shapiro and Cochran thinking he was guilty. I mean, this stuff has been out there for a while, and I don't think it's any more you know, sensational than anything that's come out earlier.
I believe that Jeffrey might well be right about this. That is, in most cases, jurors make up their minds at the end of the opening statement of the case. In this case, it seems to me that in spite of whatever most of these jurors are saying, they probably all have a fixed opinion before this is starting, and any more or less publicity isn't going to change it.
Except this is his lawyer. That's the big difference here.
Jeffrey, in your book, you indicate that you felt that a great deal of the verdict in this case was based on race. I can tell you that I've been out and watching some jury selection, and so far of that 102, it breaks down about 45% whites, 38% African Americans. Your prediction on the outcome of the civil case?
I think we're looking at a very close case. I think we're looking at possibly a hung jury. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, when jury selection really comes down to the exercise of peremptory challenges for these lawyers, what you are going to see is various pretenses and obfuscations used when, in fact, the plaintiffs are trying to get white people on that jury, and the defense are going to try to get black people.
Of course,
I wish it weren't that simple.
That's unconstitutional, the Supreme Court has said.
And with that, we have to say goodbye. Thanks to all of our panelists today. Opening statements in the Simpson case are just around the corner in Los Angeles, and Greta will be in the courtroom for them.
Tonight, though, what could be called closing arguments in the presidential election. The final debate in San Diego. Law and ethics are expected to be a big part of tonight's debate, and that will be our topic tomorrow on Burden of Proof. We'll see you then.
For a transcript of today's program, please call Journal Graphics at 1-800-CNN-News.
And coming up next is another tropical storm headed for hurricane status. And do folks in Florida need to be on guard again? Flip Spiceland will have an update. Also, how did President Lyndon Johnson make the case for civil rights at a time when many people didn't want to hear it? He'll tell you himself in newly released audio tapes. Join Lou Waters and me for CNN Today, 2 minutes away.
Sunday, Bob Dole and his vision for America's future and the Reform Party campaign of Ross Perot, both on the next Democracy in America, Sunday.